agenda.
Here we go.
Call the Tax Increment District Joint Review Board for Thursday, June 23rd, 2022. We'll go through roll call. We have Bradley Klingsborn.
Here.
Josh
Patrick here.
Thank you. Bob Matthews. He's there.
Yep,
I see him.
yep, thumbs up. He's here. Yep.
Brett Waker. Yep, see him. Okay, and then Diana Allenbecker. So all five are here. All right. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Bradley and second by Brent. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. I'll take a motion, entertain a motion to approve the minutes from June 23 of 2021.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Second. Aye.
Aye.
That passes. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to regular business. The first item is consideration with possible action on the 2021 annual report on the tax increment finance districts for the city of Green Bay. Brent, is it going to be okay if I unmute you, or if you want to mute? For some reason, we have feedback from your. Thank you. You certainly can unmute as you have questions. As you're seeing in front of you, Neil has we have enough TIDs. We try to put them, or TIFs, and we have enough of them. We try to put them on one spreadsheet to make it a little bit easier to look at. What I'm going to go through is a very, very high level of our 2021 annual report. However, you can stop, ask any questions, or you can wait till the end, ask some questions. I don't want to bore you with all our TIDs, but as you see, the way we pull it together, we have our TID on the number, the type of TID, we have the name, we have the creation date, the term date. We had the fund balance at the beginning of the year of 2021. That we kind of recap of where our different revenue sources are coming in. Most of them, the majority typically is tax increment. We have some interest. Shared revenue is really, the term has changed, but it's really property tax, personal property, and or exempt computers is that shared column. And then we have some developer agreements, and then we have if we borrowed or some other revenue source. So that is in that revenue section. And then we have expenditures. We have capital or land purchases. We have debt and the interest that goes along with that. And we have some either development finance and or pay-goes that goes through that column. And then we have other payments that go out the door. And that'll give you how we ended the 2021 year. Then you have the column of future project costs and the future revenues. Do you want me to go through each one and kind of talk about the highlights in those items? In each one of the TIDs. I'm really going to talk about the financials. Neil is going to talk a little about some of the things that are on the development side. Do I have any feedback? Do you want me to go through at a very high level by TID? Or would you like to receive and place on file with, or I have questions?
Is there anything at risk, Diana?
At risk?
Yeah, I mean, you're showing surpluses in all of them. I'm just saying, is there anything that, I mean, it looks like you're pretty much working back to break even.
Yep,
but is there anything that's of concern from Green Bay's perspective on any of the TIDs out there?
No, what I would say is, as you're seeing, our TID 13 is a negative fund balance, but what we're seeing by 2023 or 2024, we believe that TID 13 is going to turn positive. So that is some really good news. That's a large TID. It's a large increment that is starting to come in for that TID. So again, looking negative, but a couple of years it's working its way out. TID 14 right now also has a large negative fund balance. Hasn't really moved. That one, we need to get some more increment. TID 14 is your North Broadway, what we used to call Larson Green. Really, it's the Railyard now. Projects are started, they just haven't completed. We just haven't seen enough increment to really get this one moving in the right direction. There's been a lot of development, but we just need more projects completed. That one, I don't think there's a concern. We just have to, the projects have to keep moving forward. And then the other one is 22, which is our shipyard. And that is an area in which the city is investing quite a bit of money in it. We also are, we have some large developments that are happening in that area. Not a concern. That's just going to be a large investment from the city to really get that shipyard up and running. Otherwise, all of our, we are really starting to see, we've heard that before, that a lot of the TIDs go down before they come back up. And we are really starting to see some of our TIDs coming back up if they were in a negative spot, or vice, in the last two development directors, we have worked really hard in majority of our TIDs to just do pay-goes and very few upfront grant. So it's really a switch in how we are doing. The years have gotten better. Our downtown and some of our other areas have improved. So we have switched to a different kind of funding mechanisms. So otherwise, I think we really, I don't have any large concerns for really any of our TIDs.
For me, it would help if you wanted to go and just talk about how many of these are kind of locked in. Meaning, like, if I look at TID 4, I imagine those future project costs are debt service payments and maybe developer grants or something like that we've already agreed to. So nothing is going to change there. We have a pretty good idea what future project costs are going to be. And based on the increment, we have a pretty good idea what revenues are. So that's kind of locked in. But then when you look down further at shipyard and basically the shipyard and the legends, maybe those estimates are a whole lot more. This is kind of how we're feeling about things and not quite as concrete. Maybe if you could just say, all right, TIDs 4, 5, etc. are locked in and we're pretty certain on those numbers. And then the ones where we're actively working on development and the numbers are just kind of our best guess.
Yep, actually I went through and I kind of wrote on each one of them this morning. So I think we're going to be fine. TID 4 passes the expenditures period out of the 2.9 2.955. 1 million is debt. And then there is also about 1.9 million that is we are looking at is a proposed allocation to a TID 22 that is later in this deck. So right now 1 million is locked in of that 2.9. And then that is assuming that we have 4 years left of increment, the 2.2 million in increment. That is assuming 4 years of increment, but again, 1 million is locked in at debt. If we go to the go to TID 5 of that 12.7 million, that is, we have development agreements of about just under $1 million. We have about 6.5 million that's locked in at debt. We also have some projects that were started before the expenditure period ended, and that is improvements to our Lake Park, and that is about $5 million. But that's all the changes that you've seen to how that cruise ship that just came in this past week. And then there's some additional enhancements that are already in the works for Lake Park. So in this case, that really the 12.7, over 6.5 is debt, development agreements $1 million, and there's improvements to the park that have already been started. We'll continue on then to 7, 8, and 9 were officially closed in 2021. So we have closed them officially, shut them down, and have zeroed out those balances. If there were any outstanding debt service, they get moved to our debt service account. So those are officially been closed. When we get into TID 10, 4.2 million. In that case, the majority of that is future infrastructure needs. That is the corner of Main and Mason. We have a lot of flooding down there. So our director of public works is working on some projects to try to help reduce, not eliminate, of course we can't, but try to reduce, try to help curb some of the flooding down there. So at that point, those are future project costs. Those are truly infrastructure project costs. No other dollars are actually obligated at this point. And that would be assuming still another 10 years. The increment side of 3.2, that is assuming 10 more years worth of increment at roughly, $250,000, $300,000. If we continue on to TID 12, that expenditure period had ended in 2020. We still had some open projects for infrastructure near our Nature's Way, their facility. So at that point, of the 10.575 that is still outstanding, 1.7 is still obligated for debt. We have an estimated 3.2 million for development agreements or really pay-go. And there is an allocation request, or we'd be looking to potentially to do an allocation of 5.5 million to other TIDs. So really there's 5.5 that is probably unallocated for TID 12. That is assuming with 2022 and 2023 increment. We go on to TID 13, at 35 million, large number, but 6.2 is estimated at the development agreements or PAGOs. 15.3 is standing, and the remaining 13.5 was intended to put toward ramp replacement downtown. So out of the 35.3 that you're seeing in TID 13, about 22 of it is 0.5 is really, we were looking forward to using that money toward a ramp replacement. That is an all incremented there, is that assuming that this TID stays open the remaining 11 years. That makes up the 37.5 for revenue. I go to TID 14, that 13.3 outstanding. Development agreements is estimated about 5 million. Debt is about 6.3 million. And we assume that we have some additional project grants about 1.3 million in that TID. That makes up the 13.3. Increment is assuming at 12 additional years. Makes up the 16.1. TID 16, $10 million is the future project costs. Development agreements, just about 200,000. We have outstanding 5.1 million in debt, and the 4.7 is looking to pay for additional infrastructure in the military corridor. So that is unobligated, the 4.5, but that's additional project costs that we're looking to do in the military corridor. And that is assuming increment for the next 13 years to make the 9.5 million. If we go to number 18, that one, I think we have a negative fund balance, but we turned positive. We expect to turn positive in 2024 cash flow on that. Number 18, that one is 27 million is a large number, correct, outstanding. We have development agreements of about 9.8 million projected. And that one is, those are obligated, and we are looking at future project costs of 17 million in that TID. As Bradley did explain earlier, these are, yes, as we're starting to get some of our newer TIDs, these are additional projects that are us that we were possibly anticipating. But there's none of those in the fifth. 17.3 are locked in at this time. 19, another newer TID that started in 17. That is our East Town Mall area. Out of the 8.7 million, 1.5 is locked into development agreements for PAGOs, and future project costs of 7.5. That is assuming about 23 more years worth of increment to get you to your 8.9.
And future project costs on that, are you looking at future development agreements or infrastructure type project costs?
It would be a little bit of both. As you can see, there's some things happening in the East Town Mall area. I see Neil shaking his head, and he is actually going to touch on that when he gets kind of to the East Town Mall area, but I'll let Neil just speak to that, your question, Bradley.
Yeah, probably a little both, Brad. I think the one thing that I think that's unique about this one is we're kind of focusing on what we're calling in-lot development. So you kind of see where the new bank building is going up, kind of on the inside ring there. We're kind of working with the developer there to actually establish a kind of a new row of development on there. They're refacing a lot of the current mall project right now. You guys remember probably recently the developer actually kind of rezoned the back half of that building to actually get a semi-industrial tenant in the back of that to get that all fully occupied. We're still we're having preliminary conversations with the owner of the Shopco building in terms of what may happen there. I think the really kind of the part of this to prove that this tool actually works is when 19 was created, they actually left off the frontage, the parcels that were on the frontage of Mason Street. And when we get to slides later, I'll show you that. So a couple of those new buildings, like the Chipotle that just opened, a couple of those buildings, those are not in TIF 19. Those are actually fully on the tax roll. So obviously from the passerby, it just looks like it's entirely all East Town Mall, but those new developments right on Mason Street are not in the TID. And those are actually on the tax roll. So, but the investment that's happening on the inside, I think, is definitely positively affecting the investment that's happening on the roadway there. So probably a little bit of both. We've got some pedestrian improvements and some other things we want to make kind of help make that more of that area done in there. There's always some stormwater improvements we can make to make that a little bit better. But we're anticipating if those in-lots continue, we probably have some development incentives to help with those as well.
Thank you.
We're getting close to the end, and then we can ask, and you can ask any more questions. Again, that would be fine. TID number 20 on the Whitney Park at about $6 million. About $2 million is locked in for development agreements for that are already in place, and that is assuming about 8 million for additional project costs. We do or additional development agreements. Neil's going to kind of explain that some of the newer TIDs that we're putting together, we're making them smaller. So in this case, there still is some additional lots that are looking to be developed in our Whitney's park area. But at this point, that would be either 3.8 million in future project costs and or into additional development agreements. And that 6.1 million is increment over 23 years. Go on to Green Bay Packaging. That one is the large number there. But out of the 52 million for future project costs, 38 million is locked into a development agreement. That is, we have a large PAYGO with Green Bay Packaging. So out of the 52, 38 million is locked in with Green Bay Packaging. That leaves about 14.3 million for future project grants. At this point, I don't think we'll really, I'm not anticipating additional development agreements, but certainly if you've driven down those roads, there's certainly some infrastructure, railroads, street improvements that could be done over by Green Bay Packaging. So again, not locked in the 14.3, but some future project costs. That's assuming additional 23 years worth of increment. 22 is our Shipyard. That is that is the one at this point. It looks like a positive fund balance, and we continue as a positive fund balance, but that is because our borrowing is ahead of our expenditures at this point. That is going to be, that one is going to be some in cost put in by the city. Out of the 63 million that is right now projected as future project costs, to date, that is locked in at just under $10 million for development or PAYGOs, development agreements of PAYGOs. We are anticipating about $27 million in debt, and that would still free up about $1 million of future project costs for additional enhancements in that area. And the reason 59.9 million is we assume an additional borrowing of up to about 11 million. We are anticipating grants of about 7 million for the Shipyard and the water feature. And that would then, and then the balance is estimated increment for the next 25 years for this TID. And then we'll go on to the last one, which right now is our Legends District. And at that point, the 11.7 is locked in at estimated development agreements or PAYGOs of 5 million. Those are the items that are already locked in. And that would leave an allowance for about $6 million of project costs. Within that, we also have a lighting project that's going on. That's also in those future project costs. That is really, so far we haven't had a lot of development in that area. So I certainly can think that if we have more development, we'd have more allocation to development agreements or PAYGOs, but also we probably have increased increment, but that is not built in. But either way, out of the 11.7, 5 million is locked in, and then 6 million is for future project costs. That is assuming an SNO increment of 24 over the next 24 years of projects that are already in the works or that we're aware of. Any questions from any of the members on the results from the 2021?
Okay, what I'll do is I'm just going to quickly zip through these. Then Diana covered a lot of the information. Oh, go ahead.
Hang on, we have these all separate items, so we really would have to take a motion of potentially entertain a motion to receive and place on file this report.
I guess, Diana, before we do that, I did have one financial related 13. There was a payment to Foxconn, and I was just wondering what it was that they had done in TID 13 that justified the 54,952 paid to them.
That's an interesting one, but that is a property. We are on the city of Green Bay is on the hook for the property tax bill for the parking ramp that is the river ramp. The city, it was an agreement prior to Fox coming in, Foxconn, that we thought we were going to be getting the parking ramp. So I'm not sure exactly how that all happened, but we have a development agreement / parking agreement that the city maintains the building. There's some payment that go, there's some back and forth on that parking ramp, but the 54,000 is actually, it's really not a developer. It's really paying for their the property tax bill on the river ramp.
Okay. So it really didn't go to them for doing anything. It just wiped out the property tax bill for the parking ramp.
Yeah.
Essentially, yes.
Unfortunately, they haven't done anything. So yes, we're not paying them for any services or for any development that they have done.
But they do own that, or they have some sort of.
They do still own the property. Yes.
All right, thank you. I'll have a motion to approve.
I'll
the
second.
Financial review.
All right, we have a motion by Bradley, a second by Bob. Any other questions? Others, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That passes.
Okay.
Then item number 2, consideration with possible action to adopt, or did you just want to run now through the TIDs?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, absolutely. So just as again, I think Diana covered most of this, but this is in the annual report. But again, this is just kind of the general location of where all our districts are at. Here's TID 4. It's downtown. No significant development. Looking at possible allocation. Closes in 2025. TID 5 is kind of one of our more Frankenstein shaped ones. It kind of crosses the river, goes both sides here, but this one is also, this is where certainly the light wall dock improvements that you mentioned, that was a big hit with the cruise ship. We have another one. Second one, I think, is coming in on June 30th already. So that's a good sign. The company had a good experience with that. Couple one did want to make a note on the one Astor project that's in this area south of Mason has been delayed. So the developer's kind of working on getting some new financing and doing some things there. So we're hopeful that that comes back next year. But we're not positive exactly where that's going to come from. And obviously the public market project and there's a private development project associated with that. That's within this district. However, if we were going to do a deal, that would certainly probably require a separate TID going in the future, probably an overlay and a separate development agreement, which is not in place. But we have had preliminary discussions on that one, but certainly nothing in force at this point. So again, the expenditure period is done and it closes in 26. TID 10, this is several smaller retail infill projects are being looked at this area. The big expenditure, again, as Diane says, probably more stormwater improvements, hopefully for this area, just because of the flooding that does happen in this area. Looking to close that in 31. TID 12, this is the I-43 Business Park. The Nature's Way project infrastructure is the main thing that's driving that one right now. Latest closure on that one is 25. TID District 13, this is important, certainly probably because not only of its existing area, but also because of the WPS site here in this area here. So part of this area is in for that. We've had just very preliminary discussions on that site. Really kind of just looking at preliminary land use concepts with the developer, as well as just kind of coming up with a plan for environmental remediation on the site. Definitely looking at this area for how to accommodate some parking in the future. That has to do with certainly obligations with the Main Street ramp going away possibly, and then identifying maybe another location for new parking. So the Main Street ramp, specifically, that actually goes to Schreiber at their request within the next 10 to 12 years if they ask for it. Essentially, we'd have to knock that building down and give them that site for future expansion. Last conversation we've had with them is they have no intention of exercising that right now. I think their office building it's set up for 800 people. They've got about 500 on staff right now, about 100 people actually on site. So they don't have a whole lot of need for the extra space right now, but that's certainly impacting our downtown, and we'd love to get a few more folks back in the offices to come out and have lunch during the day. So and then that one closes in 32. Here's TID 14, the Railyard. Working and delayed to project financing for that project that's out there. We are in the middle of kind of negotiating that development agreement. Project has received its WIA tax credits, so that's a great sign, moving that one forward. Actually also working with them on active discussions on maybe a new corporate tenant for one of their buildings. So we are still seeing some good positive activity there. We haven't got the increment. We're working on getting that moving forward, working very positively with the developer at this point. Did 16 Military Avenue. I think the notable projects on this one is we got some outlot development possibly at the former Shopko site. H.J. Martin's also got a lot of development of outlots kind of in these same areas where we're working on these. So we think we're very positive on the future of this district as well. Again, that TID closes in 34. TID 18, this is University Avenue. This is the project in this area here, Tunin Properties. If folks remember, it used to be TMD Properties had a project here that kind of stalled and didn't go forward. We got a new development agreement in place with Tunin Properties to construct their site. We hope they're going to be hopefully moving ground hopefully this fall, and then actually be under construction with their first phase in the spring. Again, there's also a new vet clinic that's being evaluated for just a little bit more extra increment here in that area. We mentioned East Town Mall. Again, here I mentioned, see these white areas here right on the frontage area. That's where the kind of some of the newer restaurants have built and located are not within the TIF district, are coming fully on the tax roll, but I think are benefiting from the investment activity that's happening within the district right on the other side of it here. Some of those in-lots, the facade improvements, mentioned the adjacent retail development. We expect that to continue. We know the developers continuing to attract other investors, hopefully for that area. The TID should close in 2044. So here's Whitney Park. Again, I think Diana mentioned there's a couple of more opportunities for a few townhomes to be built in this area, but right now there's nothing in the docket. We're hopefully going to be continuing discussions with that developer to try to keep those moving at some point. They have met their minimum requirement, I believe, for their agreement, but they still have an opportunity to continue that development. So we hope to talk them into doing that. Green Bay Packaging, obviously everything is going to, oh, go ahead.
You know, is the response to those properties been strong? I mean, they have high occupancy?
They have done, it's like, I think there's half of them have done very, very well, and half of them have been a little slow. And we think primarily it's just due to price point difference between the two developers who worked in this area. But we certainly are still seeing plenty of demand. So we're confident that maybe if we can get the one developer who's been very successful, but to maybe acquire the rest of the space that's available, can maybe he might be the one then to pull it off and try to get some additional projects going on there. So mixed results, we think primarily based on price point for the housing units.
Okay, thank you.
I mentioned Green Bay Packaging here, and then the Shipyard, obviously, lots of news going on here. Phase 1 improvements or contract has just been awarded, so we'll be actually doing the public improvements here really in the next couple of weeks. We'll get those started. That includes all the waterfront amenities, the marina, the kayak launch, some of the bike trail, some of the other seating area right on the waterfront. That will be underway really here in the next 30 to 60 days. Phase 2 is already being planned. We have been essentially been notified of a potential award from the National Park Service of a $5 million grant for Phase 2. So we're excited to see that and hopefully get that fully implemented and moving forward. Our private developments, some updates on those. The Merge Urban Development Project, they are currently kind of reworking some of their soils costs on site. They had made some assumptions in terms of what the soil compaction level was on the site, and found that it was not what they thought it was. So we're kind of working through with them how to get that taken care of. We're hopeful that they're kind of just going to change their phasing around a little bit, and hopefully should be getting moving here in the spring. Impact 7 is actually on the Badger Sheet Metal site across the street on Broadway. They are actually looking at doing an affordable housing project as well. I think they've received their tax credits as well. We are looking at trying to figure out exactly how that project moves forward. We're just kind of really under a planning option and a preliminary term sheet with that developer, hopefully having a development agreement with them in the next 30 to 60 days. So a lot going on in this particular district. So we're excited to see some things finally get moving here on this one. So, and then obviously the Legends District, the last one. The good news was the hotel groundbreaking was just this past couple weeks ago. So they're under construction and they're moving forward. We are looking at several pedestrian trail and lighting improvements, as Diana mentioned, for that corridor, getting going late this summer, early fall. That one closes in 46. So does anybody have any questions on any of those? I mean, we just raced through a lot of territory and not a lot of time. So if anybody has any questions, have any answers, or certainly let me know if you have anything, even after this meeting. I'd be happy to follow up on any status of any projects in these areas.
On the Shipyard, those two developments that you mentioned, do we have any, you said that we were working through some changes. Do we have any commitments? Like, is there a chance that they both fall through?
The merge urban development is actually under, they are under a development agreement. So we have an agreement with them in place. We're looking at just primarily modifying the time frame for them. Certainly with costs being what they are, construction costs, there's always a little concern with that. But right now, they have not given us any indication that they plan on not moving forward with the project. It's simply working through maybe a little bit of a schedule change. Impact 7, again, we think there's kind of working through them with their numbers and their financial model of what they're trying to bring forward. But they have been very persistent in trying to accelerate their project. So right now, we're still confident. We don't have any reason to believe that they are going to delay, and hopefully we'll be in and have something moving forward with them either this fall again or early spring. But I celebrate when I actually see the bulldozers moving dirt, and we know they've got their financing and everything's moving forward. So certainly in this economy with interest rates and everything else, it's until they're actually moving and even the project's actually done, there's always some degree of risk, I think, in this day and age.
Okay, thank you.
So. Okay. All right. I think that's it. We're going to the next section, Diana.
We'll move on to the regular business item number 2, consideration with possible action to adopt an allocation amendment resolution and to amend the project plan for TID 4 downtown.
Okay, and just we don't have a whole lot of details on these at this point, guys, because these are primarily text amendments in most cases on these. They're not substantial documents. So I guess for TID 4, as we mentioned before, would simply be an allocation amendment of revenues from 4 into TID 22. At this point, for these and really all the subsequent reports shown on the screen right now, we're just going to be asking for a hold to essentially till the next joint review board meeting. So, but again, obviously the TID 4 balance we feel could be as kind of a safety net for what we're looking to kind of get completed in TID 22 with the shipyard. This is a short version on that one. So, does anybody have any questions on that one? Really just respectfully ask for.
I do have a question in terms of in your projections that you have built in, are those allocations assumed in your projections or?
Yes, they are. Yes, at that point, yes, in the future project costs, then that was kind of what Bradley had asked earlier. So for when we went through TID 4, we have $2.9 million future project costs. We have 1 million outstanding for debt, and then that is about 1.9 million as a proposed allocation to TID 22. So that is already built in over the course of the next 4 years.
Any other questions?
And how much is it? How much is the allocation from TID 12 to TID 22, please?
For TID 12, have we pulled that number for that one yet, Diana? I can't remember if we did or not. I think we're actually looking through our TID 22. Actually have Ellers, our financial consultant, actually reviewing the overall TID 22 financial picture. So by the time we get to the RDA version of this, there will be a much more sound projection on what that's going to be. But I think we may have had a preliminary number at this point. I don't know if we had one. And do you remember if we put one in for that or not?
Right now, yes, out of the 10.5 million that's outstanding that we're looking at for future project costs for TID 12, 1.7 is locked in for debt, 3.2 is estimated for PAYGO, and that leaves about 5.5 million that we were looking to do at an allocation amendment to TID 22. Or to yes, that is what we had discussed. There are some options with that one, of course. I mean, affordable housing or, but that right now there's out of that 10.5, 5.5 is not obligated as an allocation amendment.
Okay, thank you.
I guess kind of to follow up on that. So with both, I covered up the TID numbers, with both TID 4 and TID 12, it looks like they would be, if we didn't do an allocation to TID 22, both of those could be terminated.
Yes, early
this year. Like they'll have enough to cover future costs based on the increments and what the balance was at 12/31/21, that they could cover all their future costs by the end of 2022.
I think what we've, well, go ahead, Diana.
That would be correct. Based on the fund balance of 740, we get another 500 in the one of 22. I'm sorry, the 22 would go into the, yes, by the end of 20, yes. Based on future projects, yes, TID 4 could be terminated by the end of 22 and still have a slight positive fund balance without an allocation amendment.
I'm not proposing that. I'm just trying to show what the decision is, okay, do we keep these open to the end of their term in 2025? And then we can allocate 1.7 from TID 4 and 5.5 from TID 12 to give, 7.2 million to TID 22, reducing the borrowing, especially with borrowing costs being higher on this new TID, and improve the financial viability of it? Or do we terminate those right away and get our TID increments? That's the decision that the taxing authorities need to make. Is that accurate?
Absolutely, Brad. No, exactly. And I said, I think we're still, cautiously optimistic that the increment that will come in from the projects we're working on will sail like great, and we're coming back to you guys in 2 years saying, you know what, guys, we're good. we can move this, and everything worked the way we thought it was going to. Just the uncertainty around what the guy said, like the things you exactly mentioned, Brad, is kind of why we're looking at least having these as kind of the, I guess, a safety net, if you will, to kind of make sure that those projects are paid for.
Yeah, you're just pushing dollars out that would be received to another 20 years. So, I mean, that's I'd like to understand if TID 22 is truly at risk, that you, to the tune of, $7.4 million, because it's fairly early for you to be calling that risk out. So what changed in your assumptions?
Yeah, I think the main thing that we're looking at right now is obviously we just had all of our borrowing approved for phase 1. So we have that borrowing is in place, and we're proceeding with that. Even with for phase 2, even with the $5 million grant coming in from the federal, there's a dollar for dollar match for that requirement. So we're certainly looking at and having those. While we're bringing in $5 million, we still need to show the investment, the match of what the rest of that could be there. So that's certainly a driving factor. And then obviously we're looking at still some of the uncertainty around some of the environmental in that particular area as well, in terms of getting that resolved. And until we actually have buildings in the ground, certainly until that increment is actually coming in, certainly we're a little hesitant to say it's not going to be all smooth sailing at this point. But an absolute fair question. And we are actually in the middle of, Ellers is actually performing kind of an updated analysis for us on TID 22. So we will have a full detailed financial for that by the time the RDA takes a look at this, and we'll certainly be sharing that with members here as well.
Okay, thank you.
I guess that kind of brings up the question of the timing of the transfer. Do you need this funds for activities that you'll be paying out in 2023? And so the transfer needs to happen now in 22 for you to have the cash in TID 22, or is this something? Oh, go ahead, Diane.
Oh, I apologize. What I would be projecting out of the 1.9, I would say in 2022, we would have $1 million balance that would be transferred. The resolution that I would work with Neil to bring forward would be $1 million at this point in 2022. That could go to TID 22, which would reduce our borrowing in 22 to pay for the shipyard. Again, as Neil just said, we just awarded a construction contract that we will have enough to pay probably out this year, but by spring we would have to pay out the balance. So we would be looking at potentially $1 million now, and then the remaining balance, which would be roughly 900,000 projected cash flow, would be really 2025. So we would really be looking to split it half now and really half in 3 years. Again, assumptions on, this is what we've projected out for over the next couple of years.
Other questions on TID 4? Again, at this point, there's no approvals at this point. It would simply be asking this to hold this item to the next joint review board meeting for when we have you guys will have full draft project plan available, with including the full financial analysis that's certainly that Bob is referring to. So.
Yes, so is anyone willing to make a motion to hold until the next It would be RDA or really be the next JRB meeting?
Joint JRB meeting. We'll be sharing full information by the time the RDA meeting rolls around with the joint review board, but the actual action would not be until the next JRB meeting.
Including an actual resolution then?
Yes. And that will include an RDA resolution and council resolution, assuming that those are both supported. So
Move to hold.
Second.
Okay, so we had a motion to hold by Joshua, and was that Bradley that seconded?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes.
thank you.
I will go to the next item, number 3, for consideration with possible action to amend the project plan for TID 10 Main Street and East Mason eligible projects.
Yeah, right now, again, as we said, Director Steve Grenier in the Public Works Department is essentially kind of developing an updated stormwater management plan for this area. And that's where the primary investment is going to be for this particular, as we are not anticipating any other really new projects at this time. But we believe that they'll primarily be stormwater. There may be a street project or something else associated with a stormwater project, but the stormwater additions will probably likely be the main additions for this area. And again, we'll have a detailed map of what those might be and list certainly coming up here shortly. We have just a very preliminary estimate from Director Grenier, but he's looking to kind of finalize a map location as well as some more detailed cost estimates.
Motion to hold till the next joint review board meeting.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Bradley and second by Joshua. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Next item, number 4, consideration with possible action to adopt an allocation amendment resolution to amend the project plan for TID 12 I-43 Industrial Park.
Essentially, this is the same report we did for TID 4 and for the same purpose. We go through and we kind of finalize the financial projections on this. We'll determine final need and hopefully maybe confirm the amount needed, or at least for being considered for this allocation amendment.
So in the packet, it looks like there's a possibility this could go to TID 14 or TID 22. Is that still on the table?
I think right now we're looking at primarily just at 22. We at first initial, we looked at it as possibly being 14 of them, but because of the next item we're looking at here on this item, we're looking at this point just allocating to 22, depending on what happens with the action on TID 14.
Move to hold to the next JRB.
Second.
Okay, and we have a motion by Joshua, I believe second by Bob.
Yes.
And any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Number 5, consideration with possible action to extend TID 14, number 14, by 3 years and adopt an allocation amendment resolution and amend the project plan for TID 14, the North Broadway corridor.
Yeah, and again, I think similar to what we said previously, Joshua, you mentioned on this one, I think right now we're really just looking at a project plan amendment for the extension of 3 years on this one. Obviously, I think this is something that this board has looked at previously. What we're looking at essentially now at this time in terms of the pandemic and delays and the change in project financing and the loss of essentially 2 years of increment. We're back since I think this was discussed previously. We're back in front of this. The developer has provided the city with a cash flow analysis, a kind of documenting why they think they need this extension. We're preliminary look on it. Staff is preliminary agreement that we agree with their analysis, but we are going to ask Ellers to take a look at that full cash flow analysis and provide that essentially at the time of when this comes back before this body, to have that full financial, actually at the time of the RDA public hearing, to have that analysis completed and available.
And I apologize being new if this is obvious to other people, but in the annual report, is the future revenue estimated? Does that assume the 3-year extension?
It does not. I looked, the 16.1 million that is outstanding, that we show is for future revenue is increment for 12 years. And I made myself a note that does not include an extension. So it would be larger than have the extension. And again,
Good question. Yeah.
it does not anticipate an extension I mean, it's not built in at this point.
Would this change any of the development terms if we had the extra 3 years of increment of, $1.5 million going into that? Would you want to then propose infrastructure, or is this just to have a buffer in case anything goes wrong? Because right now you're projecting a $13 surplus.
So essentially, this is looking at what would be owed the developer under there in terms of the incentive directly to the developer. That does include some infrastructure responsibilities on their end, Brad. So we're assuming that kind of as part of that. There are also other agreements in the Railyard that certainly could potentially benefit from this, but at this point, we're looking at primarily the Ford at the Railyard being the primary beneficiary of that extension. And then if and when that gets passed, we've told the developer that BDL that we would sit down with them and actually renegotiate reevaluate the existing agreements on a 1-by-1 basis, but we are not giving them an automatic 3-year extension on all of their projects automatically.
Okay, I'll move to hold to the next JRB.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Joshua, second by Bradley. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Motion passes. Number 6, consideration with possible action to adopt an allocation amendment resolution and amend the project plan for TID 22, the Shipyard.
And this is one of our understanding is actually discussing with legal counsel, if we put this in there, that I don't believe an allocation amendment action is actually required for a recipient, for a donor TIF to be a recipient. However, to be on the safe side, we've gone ahead and added this on here just to cover our bases. So assuming the other actions would move forward, we would also proceed with just to make sure that we're legally covered with any action we might need to do to TID 22's project plan to be able to accept any funds, subject to direction by the city attorney.
It's a little odd to have those as separate items.
Yeah, I agree. Joshua, I agree. But and Brad, tell me if I'm wrong. In our experience with the Department of Revenue, they are not very. They like things being very specific. So we're being a little bit overly specific in terms of saying, hey, we're acknowledging these guys are donating, and we're acknowledging this one is a recipient. So we're just trying to make sure we cover our legal bases, that we've adequately noticed that's the intent of what we want to do. But
Sure,
but I fully agree.
It's just possible for the donor to pass and then the recipient to fail, which would be awkward.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah. So if we determine the legal counsel that is not needed, we will report that as such at the next meeting.
I was wondering if we could, with these allocations, if when we have these for consideration at the next meeting, if we could have the amount that would be an immediate transfer this year as separate consideration for an intention of future transfers. And I just think that the idea of transferring to avoid some borrowing costs in the shipyard makes a lot of sense financially. But we don't want to get into what Bob was getting at before. We don't want it to look like we're bailing out this brand new TID, like
Sure.
They need our financial help. And so to say that we're going to transfer things in 2025 kind of presupposes the financial condition of the shipyard at that point. Is that something that we would need, a separate action on, or what do the other members think of that proposal?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the thing is that once the dollars get transferred, they're hard to get out because it closes at the end. And so if we treat it as a financing mechanism, I'm much more supportive. Just taking cash and moving it in for a rainy day, not as interested.
Yes, I would agree. I'm like I said, actually, on my cash flow, like I said, I have for let's say TID 4, I show an estimated 1 million coming in, or sorry, 1 million going out in 2022. And then I didn't show them another transfer till 3 years later. So when we were going to bring that resolution through, it would probably would have been an ask for $1 million and not for the full 1.9. It would be the immediate, but absolutely, we certainly can have the resolution stating what we're asking for now. And then, you know, if there is an anticipated and a future date for a future resolution, we would let you know what that is. But again, we wouldn't be looking for action on that at the next JRB.
Great, thank you, Diana.
Any motion on this one? Number 6?
Of a motion to hold until the next meeting.
Second,
All right, we have a motion by Bradley, second by Bob. Any others discussion? If not, all in favor?
I,
Motion passes.
Super.
Number 7, consideration with possible action to adopt a creation resolution to establish TID number 24 Cherry Street and adopt the project plan. Do you need me to continue the whole item?
Nope, I can go ahead and list that one here. Just start off on some notes on this one. Staff has been, I think Diana mentioned before, we're trying to kind of identify smaller districts at this point, rather than go out and grab everything, just to kind of mitigate any risks of valuation going down. Just in terms of trying to be a little bit more conservative in terms of how, we know this process is to go out and amend a boundary is fairly straightforward. It's similar to what we're doing right now. And if we decide there's a good project and need to do that, again, we feel very confident with that we could bring that forward and present that to you guys at that time. So we think this is a good call. In addition, we're looking at mixed use districts because they are shorter duration, usually 20 years versus other ones. One of them, and I'll address that later on, as possibly being a more of a rehabilitation district to get that little bit extra time depending on the cash flow. But obviously, we mentioned construction pricing is slowing projects. It has not canceled them yet, but it's certainly slowing them down and causing delays. The good news is with each of the districts we'll be talking about here shortly, there is an anchor project that's kind of usually in each one that is kind of set up to help create increment right off the bat. So we're excited about that. They are not overly speculative. They have projects ready to go. The downtown TIDs will certainly be pay-as-goes to the extent we can on anything related to the developer incentive. And the industrial TID we're going to be reviewing may have some minimal upfront costs if there's some infrastructure things we need to do to accommodate that. But the very first item, this agenda item is the Cherry Street project. So folks know here's the Cherry Street parking ramp. This is here's this Adams Street parking lot, 221 Cherry Street here. Shower and Schumacher buildings are right here. The Confetti's building, the old Vic Theater, is right here. So this is again a relatively small district, but again very specific in its purpose of what we want to do. So we talk about these areas projects. Essentially, you're looking at initially this is again also in the draft plan that was attached. Looking at about 11.8 million of costs. Right now, we've got about $11.5 million in revenue coming in. We haven't done any other projections. Unlimited, we don't have full projects or valuations listed in there, so we believe that will come up enough to cover the cost anticipated by the incentives on that, but that has not been quite finalized. Again, we are also working with Ehlers essentially to come up with a specific cash flow analysis for this particular district. So it is very small. There is a project that is proposed right here at 222 Cherry Street. This is the boss's building, we've called it, in terms of the single story building that normally, if you would walk by here, you would see a single story retail structure right here. There's being proposed to add 5 stories to the top of that at this point. Subject to final architectural design, we have a development agreement in place to provide incentives to assist with the cost of actually redoing this building. Apparently, historically, this was I think it did have a 4 to 5 story building. There was apparently a fire sometime in the past that took all the top floors off it, and they never added them back on. So we're hopeful that the foundations are still good enough to be able to support a new project. Well, I understand that they're still going back and kind of confirming and verifying that. Best case scenario, they would be able to do that. Worst case scenario, they would probably have to actually do full demolition on the current site and put a new foundation in for that particular structure.
you know what the price points are, projected price points on those apartments?
I think they are supposed to be market rates, which I think was so. I'm trying to think of it, if they, depending on the bedroom unit count, I do actually have it in their development agreement Bob, I can forward those over to you, but they are probably kind of, I think they're kind of looking at the 80 to 120% of the area median income was kind of what they're talking. So a more moderate range. They're not going to be super luxury ones. They should be not kind of just out past the affordable range. So which is kind of what we're seeing is kind of more of a gap. We're doing a lot of investment in the lower end. Not as much in the higher end, but in terms of pricing and so forth, we are seeing some projects that are going that direction. What's missing is this kind of area in the middle. In terms of the folks who are they're not qualified for the lower income programs, but they're not, certainly can't afford the top of the line. So there's kind of this middle gap, and we feel this project would actually fit that perfectly.
Okay.
So we don't think, I think it's mostly just 1 and 2 bedroom units, if I recall correctly. So kind of seeing them probably in more of that 800 to 1,200 bucks a month rent, I'm assuming at this point.
So just real quickly, you said Whitney Way, some were selling quickly and others weren't. Is it a price point issue, or is it a price for the quality issue?
Well, I certainly don't know about that second part, Bob, but there's certainly a price point. I thought what we have heard at this point from other folks is that it is just a general price condition. Although certainly I know the quality of the one developer is certainly the one who's doing pretty well. It does build a nice unit, and I think has been pretty successful with that. I am not familiar with the other developer quite as much.
Okay.
So, but that's another thing.
The only reason I'm asking is if Whitney's not that far away and you're putting in similar price point, it's either I've got poor quality for the price, or or that price point isn't as in demand. So that's
right. I think that's
a question.
Absolutely fair question. Yeah, I think most definitely. I mean, from all of our market data and research we're seeing is that there's still pretty high demand for housing units. So it's surprising to see, unless something's really out of whack price wise, and it is surprising to not see those moving a little bit faster, because it's a good location. It's a great project spot right next to the park, close to downtown. It's a good spot. So yeah, but absolutely a fair question. I wish I had a better answer for you.
That's fine. We'll have a chance to talk about it again. I apologize. I have to leave at 3. I have another appointment. So
okay.
Just if I jump off, that's the reason why I'm not upset. So
okay, fair enough. Thanks, Bob. So any questions on the proposed TID 24 here? Otherwise, similar to the other ones, we'd ask for just a motion to hold this till the next JRB meeting.
The concept we saw there, is that 222 and 221?
No, this is just 222. 221 does not, it's just a parking lot across the street from this project that does not have an active project being proposed at this point. We're likely the city owns that lot, so we're actually likely to go out for an RFP to try to attract a developer to do something on that site.
And same thing, you're looking for mixed use multifamily.
Ideally, yeah. I think this is a good opportunity to get some density downtown, and maybe support some of the downtown businesses by getting a few more heads down there living downtown here. Yep, absolutely.
And that would be on the side of the existing Adams Street parking lot.
Yes, correct.
Okay. To hold to the next meeting.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Joshua, and we have a second by Bradley. Any other question, any other discussion? If not, motion or all approve?
Aye.
Aye.
That number 8, consideration with possible action to adopt a creation resolution to establish TID number 25 Monroe Street and adopt a project plan.
Okay, similarly, this is also one. We have a specific project lots right here owned by our redevelopment authority right now. The 200 North Monroe project, folks have kind of maybe seen that pop up in the news here within the last year or so. So again, a relatively smaller district, kind of in between, kind of lodging on some of our other districts in this immediate area. Again, trying with the area we're looking at until such time as other projects may come about. So again, that's the area. So we are looking at about 25 parcels, kind of looking at it as a mixed use district. However, we look at our cash flow life. We were assuming kind of a 27-year life. So if that's the case, this will end up being maybe a conservation or rehabilitation TID at the end of the day. This project has been The specific project on that location has been really experiencing some difficulties with their construction estimates. We have a signed development agreement subject to a TID being created for this one. Working with them on about a $2.5 million gap. They are not asking for more TIF assistance. This is the good news. However, we are looking at trying to find other financing options for them to essentially close the gap and complete their project. So we conservatively have looked at, we do have some, I guess, opportunity if we really wanted to, and Diane, cover your ears, because I think we kind of are comfortable with really where it's at. And fortunately, the developer has felt that yeah, he really wasn't comfortable asking for any additional more, knowing what the city's kind of with what other projects have been requested for the area. So most of them have been in the 70% increment range. This one's actually at 75, so it's a hair higher. But in terms of just overall cash flow, we do feel that there's other projects kind of north up, and this is where this project is. There's other projects we really have not fully, there's nothing pending on these projects, but we do think there have been some discussions where additional increment is very likely to occur. So we're confident that there will be substantial revenue to cover any expenditures at this point. And again, we will also be kind of taking care of having Ellers run a former cash flow analysis for us on this pick as well. Here's just a rendering of what that project would look like. So again, kind of a nice up on the Monroe, the taller scale, the 5 stories here. First floor retail, including kind of a grocery market space, possibly UWGB leasing some space here, and then scaling it down to kind of this 3-story building, again, where there's more residential kind of on the side. So very unique design, underground parking for a lot of the project. Again, this goes outdoor patio area, and then this some on-site parking for the retail customers. So it's a really very exciting project. We're excited about it. Got a little bit more work to do with them to sharpen the pencil to get them across the finish line, but we believe the TIF contribution is pretty much locked in at this point.
Is there a reason for the little jot to include the Monroe apartments?
Right, this one right here.
Yeah.
Just because we've heard the conditions that we're dealing with over there right now, Brad, they're pretty rough. In terms of, we think there's likely to be some sort of project happening there sometime in the future. There's nothing pending that we're aware of, but there has been a lot of action in terms of our inspection departments and things kind of having to come over there and do work there. So we're very familiar with it. Is prime for redevelopment. Especially if there's some activity. We do know that there's a developer actively looking at this corner of Main and Monroe, that if something could happen here, that there might be some incentive to grabbing something here on this particular site. Plus, the value of this building is low enough, it's not likely to go any lower. It is kind of a, I mean, I hope not anyway.
It's 0.
Yeah, so is it still 0 at this point? So, yeah, so we're just kind of looking at this as we do think that it is a redevelopment opportunity. And obviously, if it's a 0, there was no risk in including it in terms of losing valuation. So, but yeah, nothing specifically pending that we're aware of at this point. Just being a bit speculative that something could happen there. Any questions on 25?
Entertain a motion.
Move to hold to the next meeting.
Second.
All right, we had a motion by Joshua, second by Bradley, to hold. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me read, and then the last one, consideration with possible action to adopt a creation resolution to establish TID number 26, Grandview Industrial Park, and adopt the project plan.
Great, thank you, Diana. This is essentially here. If folks are familiar, we've had recent discussions and development agreement approved with Carnivore Meat Company here at Green Bay, located here primarily on these parcels right here. These are city-owned, we're already, essentially city-owned parcels that we have acquired for purposes of industrial development. So this is the location of where that project would go. The other areas you've identified here, staff has actually been in communication with these owners, and that they've expressed an interest in possibly moving forward on development. So at this point, this is kind of, we're viewing this as our phase 1 area, essentially of the growth part of this particular industrial area. So the I-43 park is simply kind of just off the screen over here, off to the left. So these particular area, these owners, we feel that there's a strong potential for additional industrial development going forward. you know, we do have essentially, again, a development agreement with the initial landowner. We're conservatively assuming that there would be kind of a mirrored project occurring on some of those properties. Obviously, with the amount of land here, there should be multiple projects occurring. Infrastructure is largely to this area. There's some things we'll need to extend to the south and maybe a little bit out to the west to ensure that it's available for the next phase of expansion for this area. But for the most part, most of the infrastructure needed in this area will kind of be to the south and possibly a bit of it to the east and west to provide some sort of spur connection for future industrial development here. So again, right now we anticipate basically even on the first project, the industrial project that has been approved at this point was again, Phil, was a very competitive project, and again, but a very I think beneficial cash flow for the city in terms of what its projected increment would be. So we do suspect there should be sufficient, even just on a very conservative approach, we feel there's going to be some substantial valuation and increment made to help cover the costs that we're projecting at this point. And again, we'll be doing a full formal financial cash flow from Elders as part of the final project plan. And this is the Carnivore project, a little bit tough to see. It's a great big long building. So here's kind of the building footprint on that particular site. Again, here's the actual building structure that is as proposed. And they would like to be under construction like in the next couple of weeks. So they're not messing around. So
it says here on the description of the district, yeah, this is 26, right?
Yep. Whoops. Yeah, it looks like I got the wrong.
Okay. That's for the last one,
Main
right?
Street, Monroe. Yeah, that should not be in there anymore. Yeah, that's the wrong description.
Okay. That's in the packet too.
Area here. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's supposed to be north and south of Mason Street and Finger Road, and then with Grandview bisecting it here in the middle. So thank you for pointing that out. So any questions on, and this would be a standard industrial TID, I think 20 years, I think, for this one.
I would entertain a motion.
Motion to hold till the next meeting.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Bradley, second by Joshua. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes.
Thank you. And I think just as for a wrap up here, Diana, this is again, we're kind of looking at RDA meeting and public hearing on August 1st and probably city council meeting the next day on August 2nd. Looking at probably tentatively and it's subject to checking availability for members here on the 18th or 19th of August. So we are planning on having a full kind of working draft of all the project plans ready to go and resolutions by the August 1st meeting. So those packets should include that. We'll be including that and sharing that with joint review board members as well, in case there's any questions.
Any other discussion? Or that would be our last item. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bradley, second by Joshua. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. We're adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.